I watched the email hit my inbox at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. One line. That's all it took to blow apart 11 years of my career. We've decided to shift the Meridian account to Brandon for fresh perspective. Brandon, the intern, the guy who couldn't tell a pivot table from a dinner table 3 months ago. My hands literally shook as I read it again, hoping I'd misunderstood. But there it was, my life's work, handed off like a leftover sandwich, signed by Richard Chen, our CEO, the man I'd considered a mentor. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my home office staring at that sentence until the words blurred together. Meridian was worth $4.2 million annually. It was my account. I'd built it from scratch, pulled it back from the edge of bankruptcy, turned it into our agency's crown jewel. And now, some 23-year-old kid in khakis and a polo shirt was getting the keys. The worst part? I found out from an email. Not a meeting, not a conversation, an email. Let me back up. Let me tell you who I was before Tuesday night destroyed everything. My name is Michael Hartley, 42 years old. I live in Westchester County with my wife Jennifer, our 2 kids, Emma, 10, and Jake, 8, and a golden retriever named Gatsby, who sheds like he's personally responsible for the heating bill. We've got a 1998 square-foot colonial on Maple Drive, the kind of house every suburban dad dreams about. White picket fence that I repaint every other summer. 2-car garage. Master bedroom with the walk-in closet Jennifer insisted on, and a kitchen that cost more than my first car. The mortgage is $3,800 a month. Our property taxes run about $1,200. Both kids go to private school, Dalton Academy, the good one, not the cheap one, which is another $18,000 a year per kid. Jennifer drives a 2022 Range Rover. I drive a 2024 Audi. My 401k balance was sitting at $847,000. Life insurance policy, $2 million. We take a family vacation to Cape Cod every summer, usually 2 weeks, usually spending about $8,000 total. By any reasonable measure, we were living the American dream, the real one, not the Instagram version. I'd been at Haley & Associates for 11 years, started there when I was 31, right after my previous agency went through a messy downsizing. Richard Chen hired me personally. I remember sitting in his office, this sleek glass box on the 42nd floor of a building in Midtown, and he said, "Michael, I see something in you. Real potential." He shook my hand, firm grip, made eye contact, the whole thing. By year 3, I was bringing in $8 million in annual revenue. By year 6, I was a senior director. By year 10, I was basically running the entire Northeast division. I'd survived 2 recessions, 3 office relocations, and the entire digital transformation that killed half the old-school agencies in New York. I mentored younger account managers. I sat on the compensation committee. I had a corner office with a window facing east, so I could watch the sunrise if I got in early enough. Jennifer worked part-time. She's a pediatric nurse at Mount Sinai, works 3 days a week, loves her job, loves her patients. We'd planned it that way when Emma was born. One of us needed to be flexible. I made enough that she didn't have to kill herself working 5 days a week. It was a good arrangement. She'd pick up the kids from school, handle the house stuff, and I'd come home most nights by 6:30 if I could manage it. Our marriage was solid. Not fireworks, not the newlywed passion thing, but solid. 15 years together. We had dinner without phones at least twice a week. We still held hands sometimes. She laughed at my jokes, most of them, anyway. We'd been through the normal fights, money stuff, his family stuff, her family stuff, the eternal question of who forgot to pick up milk. Nothing serious. Nothing that made me worry. The kids were good. Emma's a serious kid, straight A's, plays violin, wants to be a marine biologist. Jake's more of a goofball, loves baseball, collects Pokemon cards like they're going to retire him. Normal. Happy. Both of them thought I was the coolest dad in the world, which I knew wasn't true anymore, but appreciated anyway. My parents live in New Jersey. My dad's a retired mechanical engineer. My mom's a retired teacher. They're healthy, they travel, They visit maybe once a month. Jennifer's parents are in Boston. They're complicated, like most in-laws are, but we manage. We see them at Thanksgiving and Christmas and maybe one summer weekend. I had a good friend group. 3 guys I met at business school 20 years ago. We call ourselves the Lunch Crew, and we try to meet up every 2 weeks at this Italian place in Westchester. Tom's a hedge fund manager. David's a surgeon. Marcus runs a consulting firm. We talk about work, kids, our aging parents, which restaurants are overrated now. We golf sometimes in the summer. We do a fantasy football league that gets way too serious and costs too much money. I went to the gym 4 days a week. I kept my weight reasonable. I'm 6'1", about 195, not bad for a guy in his 40s. I read business books and the occasional thriller. I watched the Knicks even though they broke my heart every season. I was a functioning, successful, stable adult, living a good life in a country where good lives are possible if you work hard and make the right decisions. Everything was exactly as it should be. And then Tuesday happened. The thing is, I didn't see it coming. Not a single warning sign, not one. I'd had my quarterly review with Richard just 3 weeks earlier, on a Thursday afternoon in his office. He said I was invaluable. He said Meridian was in excellent hands. He mentioned possibly bumping my bonus for next year. He asked about the kids. We shook hands. I left feeling good. Meridian's quarterly business review meeting was scheduled for Thursday of that same week, 3 days after the email. I was supposed to present the Q4 strategy alongside Brandon. I figured it was a mentorship thing, bringing him along, letting him see how we handled a major client. I'd done it dozens of times with junior account managers over the years. You show them how it's done. I didn't realize he was showing me how it was done, or rather, showing me how it was done to me. Wednesday morning, I came into the office and went straight to Richard's assistant, Carol, and asked if I could get a quick meeting with him before the Meridian presentation. He's actually in back-to-back meetings all day, she said, barely looking up from her screen. Is it urgent? The Meridian account, I said. Oh, he's going to talk to you about that, Carol said. He was very clear. He wants to handle it himself. Something cold moved through my chest. Handle what exactly? The transition, she said, and finally looked at me. I'm sure he'll explain everything. He's got a calendar slot for you tomorrow at 2. Tomorrow, after the client presentation. I stood there in the hallway outside his office for maybe 10 seconds, just breathing. Then I went back to my desk and pulled up the Meridian file. There were new emails in there, forwarded from Richard to Brandon. Talking points for the QBR, strategic recommendations, client contact info, everything Brandon would need to present as if he'd been managing the account all along. That's when it really hit me. He wasn't easing Brandon in, he was cutting me out. Dno I Pavarot. I sat at my desk for 3 hours staring at those forwarded emails. My hands were shaking, not metaphorically, actually trembling. I'd take a sip of coffee and it would slosh around in the cup like I had Parkinson's. The Meridian QBR was in 18 hours. I should have called Richard, demanded a meeting right then, but I didn't. I was frozen in that specific way you freeze when your brain can't process something catastrophic, like when the doctor says the word cancer and you hear it, but the meaning doesn't arrive for another few seconds. I worked until 9 p.m. that night, just sat there, didn't do anything productive, opened and closed the same files, stared out at the Manhattan skyline. The office was mostly empty, just the cleaning crew and a few other workaholics who probably had their own crises happening. Around 8:45, my phone buzzed. Jennifer. Hey, where are you? Dinner's getting cold. I'd forgotten I was supposed to be home by 6:30. It was one of our non-phone nights. The nights we were supposed to be present, together, like a real married couple. I'm still at the office, I said. Michael, come on. The kids asked about you. Emma's got a violin recital permission slip she needs signed. I know. I'm sorry. I've got something I need to handle. Is everything okay? That question. That simple, normal question that expected a simple, normal answer. And I couldn't give it to her. Not because I didn't want to. because I didn't fully understand it myself yet. How do you tell your wife that your entire career might be imploding? How do you put that into words when you're still in the stage where you're hoping you've misread something? Yeah, I lied. Just work stuff. I'll be home by 10. Okay, I'll keep your plate warm. She didn't sound convinced, but she'd learned long ago that pushing me when I was stressed at work just made things worse. We'd had that fight before, her wanting to talk, me wanting to be left alone. We'd agreed that she'd give me space when work was heavy, and I'd open up when I was ready. This time, I didn't think I'd ever be ready. I got home at 10:47 p.m. The house was dark except for the kitchen light and the lamp in the hallway. Jennifer was waiting up, sitting in the kitchen with a glass of wine and her work iPad, reviewing patient notes like she did most nights. "Hey," she said, and I could hear the concern underneath the casual greeting. "Hey, you look terrible." "Thanks." "No, I mean, are you sick? Did something happen?" I sat down across from her at the kitchen island. The marble was cold under my palms. I looked at my wife, really looked at her. She was in her pajamas, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, and she looked beautiful and worried, and completely unaware that the ground under our life was about to crack open. "Just a work situation," I said. "Nothing confirmed yet. I don't want to talk about it until I understand it better." She reached across the counter and took my hand. "Okay," she said. "But Michael, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. We're good at that." We were good at that. We'd weathered my dad's health scare in 2019. We'd made it through the pandemic. We'd survived the market crash that hit my 401k hard in 2022. We were the kind of couple that pulled together when things got hard. Except I didn't pull. I sat there holding her hand and already planning how to keep the worst parts from her, how to protect her, how to handle this alone. Because that's what men do, right? We handle it. We don't burden our families with the details. That was my first real mistake. Thursday morning, I woke up at 5:47 a.m. and didn't go back to sleep. I lay there next to Jennifer, listening to her breathe, and felt like I was already disappearing. The Meridian QBR was scheduled for 2 p.m. Brandon and I were supposed to present together. I got to the office at 7 a.m. The building was nearly empty. I went straight to my desk and pulled up every document I'd created for Meridian over the past 2 years. Every strategy memo, every quarterly analysis, every campaign recommendation, every piece of work that had turned a struggling client into one of our most profitable accounts. Then I printed it all out, 243 pages. I stacked them on my desk in neat piles, like physical evidence in a trial. At 8:15, I sent Richard an email. "Can we talk before the Meridian meeting? My office, 11 a.m.? He replied at 8:23. "Sure, 11:15 work better?" 11:15, 45 minutes before the presentation, 45 minutes to figure out what was happening and maybe, just maybe, undo it. The morning moved like a dream sequence, slow and wrong. I attended a 9 a.m. call with the Northeast operations team. I don't remember what we discussed. I answered emails. I ate a yogurt I don't remember opening. At 11:14, Richard's assistant Carol called. "He's ready for you," she said. His office was on the 43rd floor. I took the elevator alone, watching the numbers climb. My reflection stared back at me from the polished steel doors. A man I almost didn't recognize. Richard was behind his desk when I walked in. Big mahogany thing, clear glass top facing the windows. He stood up when he saw me. That was new. He usually stayed seated. "Michael, thanks for coming up." "You said we needed to talk," I said. I didn't sit down. "Let's sit," he said, gesturing to the 2 leather chairs by the window. "This is going to be better as a conversation." We sat. The city sprawled out below us, 32 stories of New York carrying on like none of this mattered. "I owe you an apology," Richard said. "The way this was handled, the email instead of a conversation, that was wrong. That's on me." I waited. This was the moment. This was where he'd say it was some kind of mistake or a test or a restructuring that had nothing to do with me personally. "The Meridian account is a big one," he continued, "and you've done incredible work with it. Really incredible. But we're trying to develop junior talent, and Brandon has shown real promise. We think this is a good opportunity for him to grow into a senior account manager role. You're taking my account, I said, not a question. We're transitioning him into the lead role, yes. You'll still be involved, of course. Advisory capacity. We can still leverage your relationships. No, I said. No? I'm not doing that. I'm not stepping back into an advisory capacity on my own account. That's not how this works, Richard. He leaned back in his chair. This was the look he got in board meetings, the expression that said he'd already made the decision and was just waiting for everyone else to catch up. Michael, I know this is difficult. Difficult? This is humiliating, and frankly, it's a mistake. Brandon doesn't have the relationship capital with Meridian that I do. He doesn't understand their business cycle, their pain points, their competitive landscape. He's going to lose them, and you know it. Brandon is smart. He'll learn. By learning on my account, the one that's worth $4.2 million a year? Richard stood up. The meeting was over. This is done, he said. I wanted to talk to you before the presentation out of respect for everything you've done here. But the decision is made. Brandon is presenting as lead today, and you'll be in the meeting as an observer. We're going to make this transition work. I stood up too. We were both standing, looking at each other across this wide, expensive office, and I realized something in that moment. I'd never really known him at all. The man I thought was my mentor was someone else entirely, or maybe I'd just finally seen the real version. If I'm in that meeting as an observer, I said, then I'm observing a disaster. I walked out. The Meridian meeting was 30 minutes away. I went back to my desk and did something I'd never done before in my 11 years at Haley & Associates. I called my lawyer. His name is David Chen, no relation to Richard, funny enough. He's the same David from my lunch crew. I had his personal cell. Hey man, what's up? He answered. He was between surgeries. I need to talk to an employment lawyer. Today. Now. His tone changed immediately. What happened? I'll tell you when we meet. Can you recommend someone? Yeah, give me 10 minutes. I'll text you someone. Michael, are you okay? No, I said. I don't think I am. I hung up before he could ask more questions. At 1:17 p.m., I got a text with a name and a number. Patricia Voss. She's the best. Tell her David Chen sent you. She can see you at 4:30 today. At 1:45 p.m., I was sitting in the Meridian meeting room. 12 people around a glass table. 4 from Meridian, the rest from our agency. Richard was there. Brandon was there, looking nervous and excited, in the way 23-year-olds do when they're about to play in the big leagues. And I was there, supposedly as an observer. Brandon presented my work, my strategy, my recommendations, my insights about their market. And he did it well, better than I would have expected. He was confident. He was smart. He asked good questions. The Meridian team seemed impressed. I didn't say a word. I just sat there and watched a thief be praised for stealing. At 3:15 p.m., the meeting ended. Everyone shook hands. Brandon got congratulations. Richard caught my eye for half a second, a look that said, "See, it's fine. Everyone's happy." I grabbed my bag and walked out. The parking garage was cold and empty. I sat in my Audi for 5 minutes with the engine off, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. My heart was pounding. I felt like I was going to throw up. Then I started the car and drove downtown to meet Patricia Voss. Her office was in a building on Lexington Avenue, 34th floor, all glass and steel, and the kind of place that cost $10,000 a month just to rent the space. She was waiting for me, a woman in her late 50s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of person who'd seen every way a career could be destroyed and knew how to fight back. "David Chen says you're one of the good ones," I said, shaking her hand. "David's a friend," she said, "and you look like you've had a very bad day." I told her everything. The email at 11:47 p.m., the 3 weeks of silence, the forwarded files, the transition without consent, the meeting where I was an observer at my own account's funeral. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me. "Do you have a contract with specific clauses about account ownership and reassignment?" she asked. "I don't know. Probably. I'd have to look." Get it. Email it to me tonight. In the meantime, did you put anything in writing about the decision to move the account? Just the initial email from Richard saying they were shifting it, and the forwarded emails with Brandon's briefing materials. Good. Print everything. Every email, every message, every document that shows the timeline and the account's profitability under your management. Bring it with you tomorrow. Tomorrow? You're going to need a lawyer, Michael, and you're going to need one fast. If Richard Chen decided to move your account, there's usually a reason, and it's not usually a good one for the person who loses the account. I felt something shift in my chest. Not hope, exactly, but the beginning of something besides paralysis. What are my options? I asked. Patricia leaned back in her chair and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a predatory one. That depends on what's in your contract, she said. But if Richard Chen thinks he can steal a $4.2 million account and leave you with nothing, he's about to learn that contracts exist for a reason. She scheduled me for 9 a.m. the next morning. I left her office at 5:47 p.m., feeling like I'd just signed up for war. The question was, did I have any idea how badly I was about to lose it? I walked into Patricia's office at 8:52 a.m. on Friday morning with a folder containing everything that would either save my career or prove it was already dead. 11 years of emails, quarterly reports, account profitability statements, the original contract I'd signed when Richard hired me, back when I still believed in mentorship and loyalty. Patricia was already at her desk, 2 cups of coffee waiting. "Walk me through the contract," she said, before I'd even sat down. I opened to the section marked Account Assignment and Compensation. Paragraph 7, subsection C. It says here that any accounts brought to the company by an employee or substantially developed by that employee remain under their management authority, unless reassigned by mutual written consent of both the employee and the managing director. Patricia set down her coffee. Mutual written consent? That's what it says. And did you consent to this reassignment? No, he just did it, via email. She stood up and walked to her window. Her office overlooked the East River. Somewhere down there, people were living normal lives where their mentors didn't stab them in the back. Michael, what you have here is either a violation of your employment contract or evidence of a constructive dismissal scenario. Either way, it's not good for Richard Chen. She turned back to face me. But we need to understand his endgame. Why would he risk this? I don't know, I said. That's what terrifies me. She sat back down. Then we find out. I'm going to send Richard a formal letter, not aggressive, just professional. I'll cite the contract violation and request a meeting to discuss remediation. His response will tell us everything. How long will that take? I'll have it to him by end of business today. He'll probably respond Monday. Monday felt like a lifetime away. The letter arrived in Richard's inbox at 5:47 p.m. on Friday. I knew because my phone buzzed with a news alert. Richard had forwarded it to the entire executive team with a message, "Please advise." Within an hour, I got a call from Carol, his assistant. "Richard wants to see you on Monday at 9 a.m., she said. "He wants Patricia Voss there, too." "Okay," I said. My mouth was dry. "Michael, he seems upset." That should have made me feel something like satisfaction. It didn't. It made me feel like I was about to do something irreversible. I spent the weekend in a state of suspended animation. I didn't tell Jennifer the details. I just told her there was a contract dispute at work and that a lawyer was handling it. She believed me because she had no reason not to. We moved through Saturday and Sunday like actors playing the roles of a happy family. Breakfast, the kids' soccer game, a movie on the couch. But there was distance now, a gap between us that only I could see. Monday morning, I woke up at 4:17 a.m. and didn't sleep again. Patricia and I met at her office at 8:30. She was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my first car, and the expression of someone who'd won a lot of fights. "He's going to try one of 3 things," she said, as we rode up to the 43rd floor. "He'll either deny there was a violation, claim it was a business decision outside the scope of the contract, or he'll try to get you to accept a severance deal in exchange for not pursuing this further. What you do is, you listen, You don't agree to anything, and you let me talk." We walked into Richard's office at 8:58 a.m. He was already there with someone I didn't recognize, a thin man in his 60s with the vibe of a corporate lawyer who'd never lost a deposition. "Michael," Richard said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm, but his eyes were different, colder. "This is Gerald Hoffman, our company counsel." We sat. Gerald put a folder on the table. "Ms. Voss," he began, "we appreciate your letter, but we believe there's been a misunderstanding about the nature of employment contracts in the advertising industry. Account assignments are at the sole discretion of management and are not typically restricted by—" "Actually," Patricia interrupted, "they are restricted by the specific language in Mr. Hartley's employment agreement, which explicitly requires mutual written consent. That's not typical industry language. That's custom language that Mr. Chen negotiated when he hired Michael in 2013. She slid a copy of the contract across the table. "I drafted that contract," Richard said quietly. "I remember it, and I remember why. Michael had specific protections because of his experience level and the clients he brought with him." "Exactly," Patricia said, "which means Meridian falls under those protections. You violated the contract. The question now is whether you want to fix it or whether Michael wants to pursue this in arbitration." Gerald leaned back. "And what would fixing it look like, in your view?" "Reinstatement of Michael as primary account manager. Full restoration of commission authority on Meridian. A written apology regarding the manner in which the transition was handled. And we'll need to discuss whether there's been any financial impact we need to address." Richard was staring at his desk. I'd never seen him look uncertain before. "That's not going to happen," Gerald said. "Brandon is already managing the account. The client is satisfied. Changing course now creates instability." "Then you're forcing Michael to pursue legal action," Patricia said. "And when we go to arbitration, we're going to present the executive team with evidence that you violated a signed contract, damaged an employee's career, and did it in a way that suggests either gross negligence or deliberate misconduct. The arbitrator is going to award damages. The company's insurance might not cover willful contract violations. You'll be spending money on legal fees that could have gone to a reasonable severance." I watched Richard's face, watched him do the math. "How much are we talking?" Gerald asked. "Two scenarios," Patricia said. "Scenario 1, reinstatement and restoration. Michael goes back to Meridian. This is a misunderstanding that we put behind us. Scenario 2, severance. 2 years of salary as a base. That's roughly $380,000, given Michael's current compensation. Plus damages for breach of contract, plus his legal fees. I'd estimate we'd be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000 to $800,000 before arbitration even starts." Gerald did his own math. I could see it happening behind his eyes. "Let me talk to Richard privately," he said. Patricia and I stood and walked out into the hallway. We stood there for 7 minutes. I counted them. Then Carol appeared. "Richard wants to see you both again." We went back in. Richard looked like he'd aged 5 years since we left. "Here's what we're going to do," he said. "Brandon is going to step back from Meridian. You're going back on the account, Michael. We're going to say it was a developmental assignment that didn't work out, and there's no shame in that. Everyone moves forward. And we're going to have legal draw up an addendum to your contract that clarifies the terms around account reassignment going forward." He looked at me directly for the first time. "I made a mistake. A bad one. I shouldn't have done it the way I did." Patricia didn't give me time to respond. "We'll need a written commitment that Michael's compensation structure remains unchanged, including all outstanding bonuses related to Meridian." "Done," Richard said. "And documentation that Brandon's removal from the account is a business decision, not a disciplinary action against him. I'll work with HR on the language." "Fine. Michael and I will review everything before he signs anything. And Michael's going to need some time before he decides whether he wants to continue working here." Richard nodded. He looked defeated. Or maybe just like someone who'd been caught. I didn't go back to my desk that day. I went home and sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I went inside. Jennifer was at work. The kids were at school. The house was silent. I poured myself a drink at 10:47 a.m. on a Monday morning. Whiskey, no ice. And I sat in my home office and thought about what I'd just won and what it had cost me. I'd saved my job. I'd saved my account. I'd forced Richard Chen to acknowledge that he'd wronged me. By every objective measure, I'd won. But something inside me had changed the moment Patricia said the word arbitration. The moment I'd decided to fight instead of accept it. I'd crossed some line, and I couldn't go back across it. By the end of the week, I knew I was leaving. Not because Richard had beaten me, but because I couldn't work for someone I no longer trusted. And more than that, I couldn't work for a company that had made it clear that loyalty only went one direction. I called Patricia on Thursday. "I want the severance," I said, "not the reinstatement." "Are you sure?" she asked. "You won. You're back on Meridian." "I know, but I can't stay. I can't walk into that office every day knowing what he tried to do. It'll eat me alive." There was a pause. Then, "Okay, let me negotiate the best severance we can. Give me until tomorrow." By Friday afternoon, we had a new number on the table. Not $600,000 to $800,000. More. Richard offered $1.2 million. 2 years of salary, plus damages, plus an additional year's compensation as a buyout. In exchange, I'd sign an NDA and a non-compete agreement that would keep me out of the advertising industry in the Northeast for 2 years. It was more money than I'd ever had in my life. It was also a death sentence for my career in the only industry I'd ever known. I signed the papers on Monday morning. The non-compete agreement meant I couldn't work for any of Haley & Associates' competitors within a 250-mile radius of New York for 24 months. So I couldn't go to any of the other major agencies. I couldn't start my own firm in the region. I could consult, I could freelance, but I couldn't build anything that looked like a career. For 2 years, I'd be a ghost in the machine of my own industry. Everyone would know I'd left. Nobody would know why, and the non-compete would keep me from going anywhere better. It was a gilded cage made of money. I walked out of Haley & Associates at 3:15 p.m. on a Monday in November. I didn't take anything from my office except my laptop and the photo of Jennifer and the kids that had sat on my desk for 8 years. Carol hugged me at the elevator. She was crying. "I'm sorry," she said. "I knew something was wrong. I should have said something." "It's not your fault," I told her. "None of this is your fault." When I got home, Jennifer was in the kitchen prepping dinner. Emma was doing homework at the island. Jake was playing video games in the living room. "Hey," Jennifer said, smiling, "you're home early." "I quit," I said. She set down her knife. The smile disappeared. "What do you mean you quit?" "I mean, I'm done. It's done. There was a situation with Richard and I decided I couldn't stay, so I left." "Michael, how much?" "A lot," I said. "Enough. We're going to be fine." She came around the counter and held me, and I felt her shaking. I didn't know if it was relief or fear or both. That night, after the kids were asleep, we sat in the living room and I told her everything. The email, the meeting, Patricia, the negotiation, the severance, the non-compete. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Are you okay?" she finally asked. "I don't know," I said. "I won, but it doesn't feel like winning." "No," she said. "I don't think it does." She was right. Winning looked different in my head than it did in reality. In reality, it looked like a man who'd been forced out of his career, who'd been bought off with money that would run out eventually, who'd spent 11 years building something that could be taken away in an email. In reality, it looked like this. I'd destroyed Richard Chen's reputation. The story leaked. By December, 3 other senior managers at Haley & Associates had walked. By January, 2 major clients, including Meridian, ironically, had moved their accounts to competitors. The board of directors launched an investigation into his management practices. By March, Richard Chen was gone. He took a buyout and disappeared to Scottsdale, Arizona, where, according to LinkedIn, he now consults on organizational development. I'd won. I'd beaten him. I'd done exactly what I'd wanted to do. And I spent the next 2 years unemployed in my industry, living off severance money, watching my 401k get depleted, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. The mortgage didn't care that I'd won. Neither did private school tuition. Neither did Jennifer's questions at 2 a.m. about what happens when the money runs out. I'd beaten Richard Chen, but I'd lost everything else in the process. And maybe that was the real lesson he'd taught me all along. In corporate America, there are no real victories. There are only different ways of losing.